Hello there, this is the introduction to my video regarding the lithium Rhino conversion of my 2012 Polaris Ranger EV from the original lead acid batteries to the 48 volt 160 amp hour kit from Rhino. I mentioned this later in the video, but I thought I'd record this introduction up front to let you know that Rhino does have a PDF document that is more geared towards specifically installing this kit into Polaris Ranger EVs. It's not exactly year perfect specific, but I did find that it was helpful, and I did have to ask them for it specifically. In talking to the owner on the phone, he told me about it, and he eventually sent it, and I found it was very helpful to have it going along. So if you have bought this kit and you don't already have it, you should ask them for it. Or if you're thinking about buying this kit, ask them for it up front. But I think you'll find this video helpful. With that said, here we go. Thanks. Okay, so here's the first segment of my video for this 2012 Polaris Ranger EV conversion to the Rhino lithium system. I bought the Rhino 160, a single 160 kit, so that's what's going to go in here. I'm not going to record continuously. I'm just going to kind of stop and do segments as I go here with some conclusions and stuff that'll help you as you get going. Obviously, you have to get the old batteries out first. So the things that I learned here are I would start by removing your battery cables first. I removed the two main cables for the from the controller or from the solenoid first, and then all of the small battery to battery cables next. And then you can take the battery clamps off the studs that hold the batteries down in place. Your first battery does have to come out from the side because, as you can see in the other section, you can't lift it up and turn it to get the first one out. So that one on the very outside has to come out through the side panel. So if you want, you could do that first too. It doesn't matter. There's a couple of Torx head screws that hold this little kick plate down here on the side. You got to take those out. And then there's a couple of screws on the top and on the front. Note that there are a couple of Phillips screws that are on the back panel that goes about in here. You don't have to take those Phillips screws off because that piece will come off with the side panel. I've got it under here because that back piece will come off with it. So don't worry about the Phillips headed screws. Again, this is a 2012, so maybe yours is a little bit different, but this is what I found. So then once you've got all your battery connections off, then you can use, they have some little harness things that you can loop in. I had already made mine because I've had the battery out before of just little S-hooks that help you lift your batteries out. Then there's a plastic tray that sits underneath those. Those can come out, and then you can clean this up or shop back any of your debris that's in there out or whatever else. So got one side done. I'm going to move on to the second side, and then we'll go from there. I should have also mentioned that you're going to need one of these if you can find one. I believe it's called a panel removal tool. I didn't buy this. I just sort of found it in my toolbox. I'm assuming it was a donation from my dad or my father-in-law or something. But these two holes right here receive these panel clip type things here. So they push in and they expand. They're sort of like a drywall anchor where you just have to get that panel tool sort of wedged under the head and pull it out, and then they give and you just pull them out. So there's a couple of screws that hold the side panel on the top, and you have to take out the little foot panel that sits on here. And then there's, I think, just one screw that went from the floor pointing upward, and then your side panel comes off. And then you get in here and get to work on your cables and your hold downs. Okay, be back in the next segment. Here's a tip on what I found to be a pretty good way to remove these studs. So if you've got a set of these ratcheting box end wrenches, it can be very helpful. given that you don't necessarily have a lot of space to swing a ratchet or get an impact or something like that. So what I've been doing to get these out that's worked pretty well is to put one nut on. It's going to be tough for me to do this one-handed because I don't have a tripod. Slip your wrench down over that. Make sure your ratchet's going the correct direction. Slip that down there. Then take either another 13 millimeter wrench or a socket, box those together so that those two wrenches are jammed, and then you can ratchet this stud out from the top side without having to spin anything all the way down. That's what I found to be pretty handy and pretty quick way to get it done. Okay, so here the second battery is out. The second battery, or the second side of batteries, comes out way faster than the first because you're way smarter about how to go about things. And this bottom plate, the plastic trays I've already taken out. This bottom plate system here has these tangs sticking up that go into the ribs in the plastic place, or in the plastic plate that the batteries actually sit on. So when I spoke to the folks at Rhino, they said, well, you'll either cut those off or take a hammer and pound them down flat because you want your battery to be sitting on the flat plate. So I'm not sure which route I'm going to take yet. I guess I'll probably get out a little hammer and see if I can knock them down and see how that goes. And if it doesn't go well, then I guess maybe I'll get a die grinder or a Dremel or something out and cut them off. But anyway, that's where I am now. Okay, so the battery compartments are empty. I've laid Rhino's cardboard template in there just to get an idea of what's going on. I did a combination of cutting off of the tabs and knocking some of them down with a hammer. Both ways were kind of a hassle, to be honest with you. Dremel wheels just don't last, and it took forever. I don't have my die grinder here. So anyway, that's what went on there. I haven't drilled any holes yet or anything. I just laid that in there. Now up to the front stuff. Here is obviously your Delta Q charger here that's got to come out. This is your 12 volt conversion unit, so that guy can stay in. So I'm got to figure out how to tap into him and whatever, but the Delta Q charger is going to come out next. Okay, so here is the back side of the factory Sevcon charger. This is what you normally see from the front. Sorry, I get it in the shot there. The conventional wisdom here, what I learned is the first thing that you ought to do is just break the connections while you've still got it solid. It's way easier to just take it out after it's unbolted, but do your connections first. The charge cable that hangs through the dash, there's 3 screws that are Torx that take that out, and then it sort of unscrews so that you can pull the plug through the dash, and then there's these 2 connectors. I took out 1 screw. You can see over here on the side, I started to take out this screw first. You don't have to do that. This is a little subplate. So those screws are 10 millimeters, a 10 millimeter socket that is. But you can just take out the 2 bolts that go to the frame that mount this little angle plate through this hole and this hole, and those are 13 millimeter sockets. They are on the cross member that's more square to the world. Just zip those out, and then this charger will lift right out, comes in nice and easy. Okay, so here's a little bit of a quirky thing. I'm going to see if I can get this on my phone without it rotating. See that back left hole back here is lined up, and this is lined up, but unfortunately the holes for the front, this is apparently Rhino's new charger, the holes in the front are off by about half a hole. So we're going to have to customize something, and I'm kind of thinking it's probably going to be the bracket that's on the charger itself. But anyway, so this is slick, and it should go right back in there. But it's just going to have to, we're going to have to open those slots up or figure something out so we can get the screws through it and then mount it back up in the same basic fashion as what the original charger was. I should also note that the text on the back side of the battery here that shows you, or the back side of the charger, I mean, that shows you what the charging indicators are, you're not going to be able to see that, once it's installed on your machine. So this seems like a thing that a guy would probably want to take a picture of and, have access to if you're ever curious about it or you can't remember what the indicator lights mean or something like that. But anyway, moving on. Okay, so here is the new charger installed. I did reuse the little sub bracket plate that was on the original charger, but it fits nicely right back into the hole where the original one went. There are 4 longer screws with washers and nuts that Rhino gives you for the mounting of the charger. They are probably an inch long, maybe even a little longer. I suppose they're probably metric, but I figured I was going to have to cut them off due to interference, but in the end, they dropped right in there and they don't hit anything. I don't know if I can get enough light in there. You can see that screw right there in the center of the screen is poking through. Can't seem to get him to full focus, but there you go. But it doesn't hurt anything, like it doesn't interfere with anything. So at the end of the day, I just left it there. And anyway, bolted right up and on to the next thing. Okay, so the next thing to do here is, this is the charge port that they give you, and this diameter right here in my fingers is just a little bit too big to go in the original hole. Where's my focus so bad? Sorry guys. But it's just a little bit too big to go in there, so I'm going to have to take a Dremel in there. It's probably not a 1/16 of an inch that we're going to have to take out. The mounting hole pattern is a little bit different, so you're going to have to chew a little bit of the plastic. You have to chew a little bit of the plastic out there to fit the barrel through there, and then you'll have to drill 3 new holes in order to mount this guy. So that's what I'm going to work on next. Okay, so some more notes on the charger. The charger has an output cable that has a connector that's such that you need to use this extension cord I've got in the shot here. It's kind of unfortunate that it is the way that it is because it's going to be a lot of cable to manage, but it's going to work. It all mates up. So anyway, the charge port adapter, like I said, is finished and mounted now. It's got a little drop-in, dust and moisture cover with the Rhino logo on it, so it's nice. It looks good. Stainless screws. Another thing I'll note is that I took off this center cable to run the cable output, the cable between the charger and the battery bank back here, and so it's comes through and the connector goes like this. There's not a whole lot of extra length, but it did change my thinking on the cardboard template because I had the cardboard template laying in here 90 degrees from how it's oriented now. So you can probably just barely see those 3 slotted cutouts that match the stamping on the base. The deal. When I had this laid out originally in my mind, it was going to sit in there 90 degrees from where it is now. So you want to make sure that your holes are oriented this way. So your 3-hole pattern would be to the front and the rear of the vehicle, not from side to side. So once I get this sort of laid out, then I'll be back with the next segment. I should have also mentioned that with this laid out the way that it is, a couple of the screw holes, especially the ones towards the drive shaft in the center, will be inside of the skid plate. So I had kind of hoped to not do this, but if you're gonna do it the way that I'm gonna do it, you're gonna have to get under it and take the skid plate off so that you got access to the nuts and bolts from the bottom and the top. I do believe that I've heard that some people just use self-tappers, which is maybe fine, but I just don't. My unit is going to see trailering time. It's probably going to see more vibration than maybe somebody's just going around a farm would. So I think I'd like the peace of mind of having bolts and nuts through the other side so that So I know nothing's going anywhere. So I'm going to get this thing up off the ground and get it up on some jacket stands and get under it and get the skid plate off, and then go that route. Okay, so the battery is mounted now. You might be able to see in here, I hope, in the center screw in the front, I had to use a self-tapper because it turns out that's in the middle of a cross member, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to get to the bolts and the nuts. The others, this one closest to you is in the middle of this cross member, but I just managed to get it right so that it lines up with a slot in the bottom, and that is just big enough to be able to get, I think it was a 13 millimeter socket through the slot to grab onto the nut. So there's 3 compatible ones in the back. Obviously, you want to make sure that your connections are to the front, and now I just need to run the wiring up and good to go. I did also mention before that the innermost pair of screws are inside the skid plate. So I did have to get it up on blocks and take the skid plate off and get under it to get access to those, to the bottoms of those screws so I could get the nuts on. Okay, so now the unit is in, it has been mounted and wired, and maybe you can hear the fan running in the background, but I'm currently charging. I've already done a test and I have good motion. You can hear the solenoid click when you turn the key on, and I rolled forward and rolled backwards. The instructions that come with the kit aren't perfectly clear, but you can see from this side the new cable. That is the black cable that goes through the ground. On the Sevcon controller, that terminal is labeled B-, and that is that goes to the negative side of the battery. And then the new red cable you can see here on what's labeled as contactor top. That is the positive side of the new cable for the positive side of the battery. So on each side of the battery, I'll walk around the machine now. On each side of the battery, you also put the smaller cable that has a connector that goes to the charger. So obviously the red goes to the red side, the positive side, and the black goes to the negative side. And then you can see this other silver connector there is what goes out for the other harness that is the round gauge. So there is the round style gauge, which is what I ordered for my machine. And then there's a remote power switch that serves the same function as the power switch on the battery in here, but you can put it in your dash so you don't have to lift the seat and get under the seat to turn the battery on every time. I have not drilled that hole and mounted that switch yet, but I've tested the switch just hanging out in the engine compartment, and it works. So that's where I am now. I have some other conclusions. I'll do another kind of wrap-up summary here in a little bit. Okay, one other thing I've got to note here as I get to do the wrap-up and do some of the finishing things here is this wire that's shown right down here is not needed. There's another one that's on the back side, so we'll just be taping those off. I'll probably cut the ring terminals off, or maybe leave them on and tape over them or something like that. I don't know what I'm going to do, but those are no longer needed. Your 3-post terminal bus in the front of the machine will work as normally. One post is a constant 12 volts, one post is switch 12 volts, and then the middle post is ground. That worked fine. I had to troubleshoot another issue. I had an issue with some lights that was apparently unrelated to the Rhino installation, so I thought I had some other problems, but turned out to be nothing, so those are fixed. Another thing that was kind of a struggle is removing the original gauge. This is the original hour meter. It had this retainer on the back. So what I did there was broke this connector loose, and then basically it was in the machine sort of like this. I just grabbed these 2 tabs with needle nose pliers and pulled straight backwards. then the retainer came off, and then the gauge goes out the front. I'm going to leave it connected and zip tie it off somewhere so that I still have a functional hour meter on it. But then the rest is just, zip tying up cables and making sure that stuff is safe. It isn't going to get rubbed. And this is the remote power switch for the battery. This comes off. You just break this little connector. There's this retainer clip that I've got my thumb on. It pulls off the front. There's a nut that I've already taken off. So we'll drill a hole in the dash, and then the switch pushes through the dash from the driver's side, and then reconnect it in the back. And like I said, then just connect things up, and we'll be pretty close. Be back in a minute with a wrap up. Okay, so here's some of the stuff that got added to the dash. This is the round gauge. They have a like a right angle, touchscreen option. I didn't go with that because I've got this goofy windshield kit in this used machine that I bought. So I went with the round gauge, and talking with the folks at Rhino, they said it'll drop right in the old hole. That's true, with a caveat that I'll come back to in a minute. This is the remote on switch that is connected to the battery bank through the power harness. You'll see that if you buy this kit. I drilled that guy, and this is the charge port. I think I showed this in a previous segment. I just had to open that hole up by, I think I said it was around a 1/16 of an inch. It was quick work with a Dremel, no big deal. So going back to the round gauge is the right diameter, but the existing gauge had flats on it. So there was a flat, so the diameter is right on the sides, but on the top and the bottom, there was a flat section. So there again, quick work with the Dremel. All you had to do was take out the flat sections of the hole so that it was approximately round, and then your gauge will drop right in, no big deal. This remote power switch, that took a 7/8 hole. It's probably a metric number, but I didn't have a 7/8 spade drill. The spade bits are great for drilling, through this dash material. They go right through. But I had a Forstner bit. It was kind of not ideal. It took a little bit longer, but it made a nice clean hole, and that's what fit there. So he goes right in there. And then I told you about this. Just open that hole a little bit, drill you 3 new holes, and he screws right in. So that's how the dash mounted stuff went. Okay, so here it is. It's in. This is shown from the driver's side. I've gone and zip tied all my wires in. The big thing there is to keep everything away from the drive shaft and any rotating parts, obviously. I did zip tie up those 2 pink wires that were labeled inside the case that you didn't need. So those are good. I did keep my old hour meter. I just zip tied it to a hole in the frame rail over here and keep it so I have a functional hour meter there. As you can see here, this is the original Sevcon 12 volt converter. I kept that, so the one that they give you with the Rhino kit, they say just to hold on to for a spare, so that seems like a pretty good idea. There again, all the dash mounted stuff that you saw is right inside here, so as you're working on that stuff, I broke this connector loose for the DC converter and this guy and got it out of the way. It just makes it easier so you can get your hand back in that hole and do the things that you need to do. It was pretty good. The instructions are okay, but they're not really model specific, so you're going to have to improvise a little bit. You're going to have to have a feel for what's going on. You might have to join a Facebook group or somebody else, somewhere else, and get some assistance if you don't really know exactly what you're doing. I got a lot of help from other folks that was good. Now, I'll also tell you that in talking to the Rhino folks, there is a PDF document that they have that has instructions that's specific to Polaris installations. Not, my exact model. Again, I said this earlier, but this is a 2012 Ranger EV. But they're more specific than what you just get on the paper that comes in the kit. So ask them to send you that because it was helpful. All in total, I spent probably maybe 10 hours getting everything in and figuring it out. But there again, I didn't have a plan. I just sort of opened the crate and just started working. And it probably took me, I don't know, maybe 5 hours to get all of the stuff, the original factory stuff off that I'm not going to use, like the hour gauge, like the original batteries, like the studs, the battery trays, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and having a Dremel would be a good idea. Obviously, you need to have a drill. They give you safety glasses. They give you gloves if you don't already have any of that stuff. They give you a little package of zip ties, which is great. I probably used a handful more out of my personal stash, but it was okay. And you will have some extra fasteners. It seems like they give you a small little kit of fasteners. The fasteners really aren't maybe labeled as great as they could be, as far as when you buy a desk or something like that, and it says this is A, this is B, this is C, and I sort of picked things up and used stuff that made sense, and there's a lot of leftover stuff. But anyway, it's a good kit. They were good to deal with. So far, I'm very happy with it. So good luck with your project. Thanks for watching.